Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome back to Rayman Legends. So, these scratch-off cards, I figured I would get them out of the way early in the video.
Fair enough.
We're not going to be doing them after the first couple. I realized it's really not that exciting a thing to watch. But I figured the first few, just to show off what kind of things you can get from it, I would show them.
Nice.
You may have noticed that when you scratch off 4 lums instead of 3, you get a higher number of lums from the bonus. Not that big a thing, but...
Lottery tickets.
Yeah. I think I said in the last video, it's like microtransactions, but not quite as annoying.
Well, you don't actually pay real money, though, right?
No, not at all. It's like they give you a bunch of free microtransactions. It does feel kind of like an engagement thing.
I'm imagining
I don't know.
Rayman is one of those, like, lottery addict types who hangs around gas stations.
He kind of looks like one, to be honest. Rayman has kind of like a lower-class American look to him. Anyway, so this next part of the first world is called Ropes Course. And the name is because there are ropes all over this level that Murphy can cut for you. You have to be a little bit careful, though, because cutting them right off the bat is not always the best thing to do. I don't know how this is tied into ropes, but there's also a lot of enemies on stilts in this level. Always something nice. Unfortunately, I just missed something there, so I'm going to go back and get myself killed so that I can redo it.
Ouch.
One nice thing about this game is that you can always pretty much redo a section without losing much progress. It's kind of like Super Meat Boy in that sense.
Yeah, actually, Super Meat Boy and Hotline Miami kind of had that in common.
That was about all they had in common, I would say. Except maybe being retro-inspired.
Well, Super Meat Boy's aesthetic was a little bit gory.
That's true.
And Hotline Miami's was extremely gory.
Anyway, we're just using these guys as a platform to get what we want. Rayman does have a tendency to walk all over people, literally.
I was gonna say, this could be some kind of on-the-nose metaphor for, like, narcissistic personality disorder.
I think it's a metaphor for Ubisoft executives.
Oh! Ooh, I didn't even think of that.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't think Michelangelo has a beef with his employers. No, but we finally get some nice payback against these things which bothered us so much in earlier levels, because Murphy is able to slap the eyeballs on their arms. Which I can only imagine hurts intensely, and I'm glad of that.
Yeah.
They're annoying enemies.
A small hand slapping you right in the eyeball would hurt like hell.
Yeah, so that's one example we just saw of a time when you want to be careful when you have Murphy cut the rope, because there's a bottomless pit down there, and if you're not able to hit the cage when it goes down properly, you'll lose that teensy for this level.
Yep.
He does reappear when you go back, so it's not, nihilistic or anything.
That is good that you don't have him, like, lost forever.
Well, that wouldn't be the Ubisoft way anyway. Anyway, more ropes. These are kind of pointless. You don't need to have Murphy do anything with them. But
True.
here's one where it's better not to have Murphy cut the rope at all, because you can just hit the guy regularly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's probably
And there's several... No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's kind of seems like a trap for people who are just having him reflexively cut everything.
Yes, there's actually a lot of that in this game, which I appreciate. It's clever. But yeah, what we just saw there was one of several examples in this game where you're expected to cut one rope and then not the other, so that there'll be a ramp to lead you up to another area. We're going to see more of that in later videos when you're actually moving quite fast, which will make it more interesting. Here's another example where you want to make a ramp, so don't cut that second rope. However much you'd like to crush that eyeball plant, you have to wait on that. Here's kind of a weird little separate area where they teach you how to properly cut these ropes at the right time, so that Rayman will sort of fall down on the bigger end of rope. But you have to make sure not to do it too late, or he'll stick to the tiny end, and that makes it almost impossible to get around. I really messed up this room. I think I got maybe one of the lum bonuses, and the rest I just kept bumbling into all of them. But that's okay. This game is over-generous with lums, and it's not too difficult to get 600, even if you mess up a bit. Anyway, now we're finally going to cut this.
It did seem pretty forgiving.
Schadenfreude. Yeah, more cutting these ropes in order to have something to hang on to. And now it's getting a little more active, which I like. In the second half of a lot of levels, they tend to get faster. Which it's sort of like, you figured out the mechanic of the level, now we're going to see if you can do it. Basically, testing your reflexes now that your knowledge is gained.
That makes sense.
This is kind of an interesting little room. You can't actually have the grabbing hook, or the ring, and the cage in the same place at the same time. So what you have to do is jump off the ring and use Rayman's floating ability to stay in the same place while you bring the cage back over. More of the same here. This isn't one of the more creative levels, I have to say. They do the same thing a lot. Although just as I say that, I start really messing up here, so maybe samey is good for me.
Oh well.
Yeah. There's really no way to get back up from that wall. Some walls in this game Rayman can jump off of to get back to where he was. But that one's just too far away. The problem is I'm being impatient here. You really need to go all the way to the right on that small chain in order to jump high enough to get on the other one. I think I make it this time, we'll see. Yeah, you have to wait a little bit. Anyway, now we have some guys tied to ropes that are keeping them from running forward at you. So you can just take care of them at your leisure. If you have Murphy cut them right off the bat, it actually makes them harder.
I can imagine, yeah, because...
I don't know what that big guy gets out of, like, keeping them there. It's kind of bizarre, but... You'd think he'd just let them go.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yep. I think part of the idea they had with this level is that maybe you would cut the ropes and then get out of the enemy's way so they would just rush all over the place. Which would be humorous, but it's a little harder to do. This guy you have to deal with quickly, because if you don't, he will run off the edge of the cliff and drag the cage with him.
Oh dear.
But, not difficult at all. He's really easy to catch up to. You just have to be paying attention, basically. Anyway, I'm fooling around with that eyeball plan. But really, there's nothing left of the level. There are some levels in this game where there's something at the very end, sometimes even past the exit door. So you do sometimes have to be careful, but not in this case. And as we can see, even though I didn't do a great job of this level, I still get the gold cup, so...
No.
I think, all things considered, this game is kind of easier than Rayman Origins.
Well, I mean, I tend to prefer platformers when they're a little more forgiving.
Yeah, I can see that. But for fans of struggle, don't worry, that's not going to last very long. I think I get a gold cup on all the first world levels, but not much after that. More notifications. And then this is an interesting level, Quicksand. This is going to be the first chase level, and you can probably guess what that means, but we'll also see it in action shortly here. So we have a damsel in distress here.
Oh, no.
Even though she looks a lot like the queen, she's actually not one. I guess maybe it's a teensy princess or something?
Interesting.
Or maybe just like a hot teensy girl, I have no idea. But the point is that one of the evil magician teensies has captured her. After doing some kind of weird torture where he was squishing her nose. Seemed oddly flirty for something that an evil guy would do, but whatever. These guys are just awful, so we're gonna have to take care of him.
Don't kink shame.
Anyway,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, so even though it's really important that we follow after this magician guy and get the girl back, that doesn't mean we can't take time out to do these bonus rooms.
Well, of course
This time just freezes when we go into them. It's one kind of odd thing about these levels. I would have thought maybe they would have stripped out these sections in these levels and just had a smaller number of teensies and focus more on constant action. But they do pause the action for you to just do more puzzle rooms. It could be that Michelangelo and his team just thought of so many puzzle rooms that they couldn't bear to have a single level without them.
True.
Although, really, when I think about it, that's not entirely true, because there are levels that have only 3 teensies, which are totally action-focused. So, I don't know. One thing that's certainly clear is that they had an overabundance of ideas when making this game. I think that's also true of Origins. These games are just really running over with ideas. They're not all fantastic, but there's a ton of them.
But they're at least decent.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you think about it, this is one of the few pure platformer games left, or series. It really is just platforming. There's almost no emphasis on combat or anything like that. There's very few games around like this anymore. And it only gets by being a classic platformer, by having lots of ideas. Mario's kind of like that. Anyway, so you can see the gimmick. It's been here for quite a while. Is throughout this level, it's just a bunch of falling platforms, levels, basically. It's like you're falling through a giant maze, which is kind of cool. It's like navigating a maze, but it's more active because you have to keep it from falling on top of you.
Ooh, yeah.
There were quite a few levels like this in Rayman Origins in the second world, called the Desert of Didgeridoos. And in fact, even the style of this level is kind of similar to that, so... You can sort of see here how they are able to cheat a little bit by getting new ideas out of older aesthetics.
Yeah.
Not everything in Rayman Legends is entirely brand new, but I do think they managed to do a pretty good job with it. It's interesting, Rayman Legends with its whole aesthetic is kind of more gamey than Origins was.
Yeah.
Origins has a storybook quality, whereas Legends, because you go through these clearly defined worlds which you go into through paintings, it's all a little bit more stagey and artificial. But that can be fun in its own way.
But, yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't really seem like it's done in a bad way. Like, it's, it feels like you're facing a deliberately constructed, course.
Yeah, like a toy box. For those of you who are wondering why I hesitated there, it's because I wanted to finish that song. The song near the end of this gets really good, I think.
Reasonable.
Yeah. Anyway, I like the placement of this puzzle room. As you saw, you have to actually wait a bit and backtrack to get into this, which is kind of cool because the whole level you've been encouraged to just rush forward. And if you do that, you'll miss this one. I actually missed it the first time I played through the level. But there we go. We're going to rescue the king. With his strange white beard, which doesn't seem to be on his chin. It looks kind of like... Sometimes it looks like it's hanging off of his nose. But anyway, we managed to catch up with him, but we don't actually beat the magician here. She distracts him, and that's how she's able to get away. No, she rescues herself. She don't need no man.
Fair enough.
Anyway. So he cusses at us and then just flies off. What a jerk. We'll be seeing him again, though. In fact, the magician recurs in every world with one of these levels, and then later on in the boss. I don't know if it's supposed to be a bunch of different ones. The cutscene at the beginning did show a whole crowd of these guys, and I think that's what it is. In the original, it was one guy that kept recurring, but I don't think that's the case here. It kind of makes sense because the whole Rayman platformer concept is that it's all taking place in a dream. So every time the Bubble Dreamer has a nightmare, maybe it makes another one of these evil magician guys.
Oh.
I think that's kind of what they're going for. It's a little confusing, you know. This game has a very straightforward plot. It's just the magicians captured all the Teensies and you need to rescue them. Rayman Origins was very similar. But in other words, I guess what I'm saying is there probably isn't a backstory. The game's story is not sophisticated enough to need one. And I don't think they came up with one.
That makes sense.
You just have to enjoy going through these levels. Mario's the same way. Mario's never had a good story.
Well, I mean, with games in general, you know, you have to enjoy the game.
Well, I don't know if I'd say games in general. Lots of games have good stories. But platformers, usually not. Anyway, this thing Murphy's bringing back and forth is kind of interesting. On the top, it's spikes, so you have to get it out of the way. But it also has a ring on it, so you need to bring it back so you can use it. That's kind of the trick they play in this level. A lot of the things that you move have spikes on them somewhere, which you might not notice at first.
Oh,
so while you're moving them around, you have to be careful not to hit them in the wrong way.
Ooh.
But you can't just avoid them altogether, because they're also your platforms.
That is clever.
I like these little accordion platforms that can go up and down.
And can smash you against spike plates if you're not careful.
Exactly. Although they'll still kill you if they smash you against the wall. So it doesn't make a huge difference. For a minute I thought there was another Teensy cage over there, but I was actually hearing one from farther on. That's one thing that could be kind of annoying in both Origins and Legends, is it's a little difficult to tell where a sound is coming from, and the sound is often your best clue to whether or not a Teensy is nearby.
Ah.
So yeah, now we can see he was below me that whole time. But I thought he was off to the left. It's kind of a weird thing. We also, I don't know if you noticed this earlier, some of these enemies will actually be tormenting lums that they have in their grasp.
Oh dear.
And if you beat them up, you'll rescue the lum. I think I actually got to that too late and the guy, like, squished it or something. Kind of gruesome, actually. But they are just lums, so
I think that happened in The Great Escape when Razorbeard eats a lum.
That's right, that does happen. And unlike later games, there's no concept of like, oh, well, he ate it, but it's inside him and it'll come back. It just disappeared.
Yeah.
There were that many fewer lums in the universe afterward.
I think you had to go to, like, the Tomb of the Ancients to get that one back.
Oh, like if you went to the afterlife to rescue it? I forgot about that.
Something like that, yeah, basically.
That's kind of clever, I like that. There's always been a strange thing in the whole Rayman series as to whether or not lums are sentient. They have smiley faces and all that, but the way you collect them, they don't seem like they're like real stuff.
It is kind
of
of
hard to tell. They're not like Teensies. Teensies clearly have a personality. Anyway, there's another chance to squish yourself against the wall if you feel like it.
Because you just need more of those.
You may have noticed these weird turnip things I keep digging out of the ground. That is something that was not in Origins. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's a little weird, but it's a little bit different from just your standard collectible. Since you have to do a ground pound to get them at first. That guy you cannot get with a normal hit. You have to charge up your fist.
Interesting.
I guess you could jump out into the middle of nowhere and then try to get him, but that would be a fool's errand.
Ooh, yeah, that doesn't sound like a great idea.
Anyway, now the music has suddenly changed because there is lava following us.
Oh dear.
I think I mentioned at the beginning of this that there's a dragon around here. So we need to get past here pretty quickly. Unfortunately, you have to use Murphy for this, and Murphy is kind of persnickety. You have to be very close to the thing that you want him to affect, because otherwise you'll probably be interacting with the last thing you affected.
Ooh.
So like there, it's hard to get him to tickle the guy, because he'll want to move the platform back and forth until you get right next to the guy.
Yeah, that is always a problem in anything that requires really precision controls, is you have to make sure your controls are up to the task.
Yeah, so there's another example. Oh, sorry, my mistake. That guy was not tormenting a lum, he was actually torturing a teensy. So, as soon as you step on these little coffin platforms, which are really weird, I remember something like that from the Land of the Living Dead in Rayman Origins, but that was near the end of the game. So they're really cranking it up on the aesthetics here. You may have noticed in that last one that there was a spike thing on top of a teensy, so it tricks you into trying to hit it, but if you do, you will drop the teensy into the lava.
Oh dear.
Yeah, nasty. Anyway, this guy's trying to fix his, I don't even know what that is. It's like a spruce goose or something. But yeah, he's summoning his dragons to try to get us. He thinks he's Daenerys Targaryen. Fortunately, we have a wizard on our side. Always a good thing to have. And he gives us an ability that Rayman has had in several games. Don't mind this cutscene. It keeps playing, I don't know why. You have to manually skip it. But... Anyway, we can now launch our punches.
Oh.
Which we need to get rid of all these dragons, and there are a lot of them. Each one will be spitting out a stream of fire. And you have to hit them from kind of far away, because if you get close to them, you'll be right in the middle of their fire stream.
Oh.
So it's interesting. It kind of turns this into a shooter briefly. Oh boy, that was a stupid death. I do think it's a little strange they keep playing that cutscene over and over again. Surely no one would actually want to see it again. So,
yeah,
they could have just had it scripted so that after the first time it doesn't play again until maybe you quit the level and start over? I think that would make more sense. Yeah, this is me giving Ubisoft game design advice. I'm sure they really care.
Yeah, sure they'll love it.
Yeah. Anyway, that is the end. And yes, I missed the Queen Teensy, actually. She was near the beginning of the level. Just a heads up, I'm not going to be doing 100% on screen here. Sometimes I'll be going back to levels I played before off screen to finish them up. But
fair enough.
This isn't a 100%. And I'm 6 lums short of the 600, which is a little sad, but... So actually I was wrong. We get to the failure a little earlier than expected. Already I'm not getting the trophies.
Oopsies. Oh well.
Origins was kind of like that too. There's so much stuff to collect in this game. You know, so many different challenges and time trials and stuff that there's no way I would want to do it all. I especially don't like time trials, which was annoying in Origins because it was kind of more important in that game to get 100%. And to do it, you had to do a lot of optional time trials and stuff like that.
Ah.
And they're difficult. I mean, they're probably the most difficult stuff in the game. It really requires an exceptional grasp of the game's physics, which I do not have.
Ah. Yeah.
Oh boy. Speaking of my less than exceptional grasp of this game's physics.
Oh,
So no.
dearie.
You might remember in the first video we had a chase level like this. And the
Yeah.
point is just keep going forward, know exactly when to press those buttons, and you kind of need to get into a rhythm. The firewall is a little bit forgiving. Like, it'll slow down, I think, almost imperceptibly when you get really close to it.
Uh-huh.
But you certainly can never move backwards. If you ever do that, you're doomed. I guess what I'm saying is, it lets you hesitate every now and then, but if you make a wrong move instead of hesitating, that'll almost always kill you.
Ooh. Does not sound fun.
No. It is a little better than the tricky treasures from the first game, which were less forgiving overall, I would say.
Well.
One other thing is that these levels are pretty short, which is nice. That was also true of the tricky treasures, though. Once you do get into the groove, these things can be surprisingly easy, though. That's the funny thing about them. You have to focus less on jumping at the right time and more on just a sequence of moves.
Oop.
By the way, cutting that is a mistake. What you should do is just leave it up in the air. In fact, I think once you cut that, it is impossible to get past it. So you do have to just not make that move in the first place.
Ah.
Which is interesting. That's not actually, I would say, very much like the rest of this game. Usually the idea is if you act hastily, it makes the rest of it harder for yourself, but not impossible.
Ooh.
But that, I think, literally is impossible. Anyway, in keeping with the tradition of some of these, this does get easier near the end. Although you have to remember, and I forgot, that you can destroy those little fireball things by having Murphy poke them in the eye. Basically anything with an eyeball can be poked by Murphy in one of these levels. I forgot again. Something about those ghosts made me think that I had to avoid them, rather than having Murphy hit them. But in fact, this level puts you in exactly the right position to leap right into them. So you don't have the choice of avoiding them. You can see how close they are together. It really isn't an option at all.
Ow.
Oof. That was even worse. I have to just... Did you see what I mean about it kind of hesitating a little bit when you get really close to it?
Yeah.
It's not actually moving as fast forward as you might think it is. It kind of cheats, really, the game does. It has, like, rubber banding on the flame wall.
Ooh.
It's bizarre. Anyway,
Yes.
now that is the way you're actually supposed to do that. You get
Yeah, I
on
was gonna
quickly and then
say-
duck and have Murphy move you over.
That seems pretty rough.
Well, remember, this is the first world. They'll only get harder from here. Although I am pleased to say, they don't necessarily get a lot harder than this. What it is that each new world has a different kind of mechanic associated with these short levels.
Ah.
So this one is running. The second world we're actually going to see is more about falling and controlling your fall.
Interesting.
Another thing worth noting is that these are pretty hard levels, but you don't have to do them. These are some of the few levels in the game that are totally optional. It's why they're called Rescue Something rather than a normal level name, and why they're in the background instead of being one of the paintings.
Uh-huh.
This next one, however, is not optional. It is, I'm pretty sure, the boss fight. Yep. So there's a number of what you might call high-concept boss fights in this game. Just like Origins, most of the boss fights are pretty, like, set-piecey.
Uh-huh.
But I like them. They're pretty clever. We once again get from our magician friend the rocket punch.
I was gonna say, in platformers, bosses do tend to be more conceptual in general.
Right, because otherwise they just have you jumping on platforms for the boss, and that's not fun.
With the exception of something like Cuphead.
Sure, Cuphead is not a platformer, I'm sorry. It has platformer elements in the levels, but it is a run-and-gun shooter. That's what it's inspired by.
Ah.
You know, Gunstar Heroes, that kind of thing. Which, those games do have platforming, but they're not about platforming.
Fair
Contra, actually. Contra is probably the most played game that you can identify Cuphead with. Anyway, back to this game. So we are fighting a giant dragon. And he's just launching fire at us with no chance to retaliate. Which, since he's flying, that's the sensible thing to do. But he is actually a good sport. He'll give us a chance to hit him back right here.
Actually, you know, what's funny is, you know, we were talking about Cuphead.
Yeah.
This
What's
is
that guy's name again? Grim Matchstick?
this seems like about as close to Cuphead as you'll get for this game.
Pretty much. Although, in this game, the boss takes many fewer hits,
True.
which is what I like about it. I also really love this medieval-inspired music. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. This is one of 3 music tracks in the game I've actually bought on iTunes. So here we need to use that trampoline in order to get up to hit the guy.
Uh-huh.
Not terribly difficult. It's very similar to the first level. You gotta be a little bit careful. And that takes care of him for the second time, but he is not out of the fight yet.
Not yet.
It's fairly typical for platformers. It's a 3-stage boss fight. Although not all of the boss fights in this game are 3-stagers. We'll see that later. Many of them are. It's kind of a classic. This one, when I first played this boss, I did not know what I was doing. But actually, this platform shifts depending on where you're standing. And when the enemies are still around, it shifts based on them, too. So you got to be careful. Let it tilt too far in one direction, and either you'll get toasted by the fire if you're on top, or you will fall off if you're on the bottom. So you've got to manage it.
That's tricky.
Yeah, it's clever also because this guy brings his fire down so low you have to go to the edge.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to use that as cover? Oh, well.
No, but it basically forces you into tilting it, which is I think is pretty clever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I lose my heart there, but I also managed to knock him out. And then this happens.
Ooh.
Yeah, he's out of control. I think we disoriented him with all the punches to the head.
Yeah, and that would... he looks kind of drunk.
Yeah. He's not going to be winning any IQ competitions from here on out, I don't think. Oh, and he just crushes a bunch of the enemy soldiers, which is great. Okay, so we finally get to the magician. He tries to run away and gets stuck.
And then he gets stuck.
Poor bastard. Let's just savor this for a moment. This guy's caused us a lot of trouble.
God.
I'm pretending to run away, too.
That is
just to mock
cruel.
him. Let's put him out of his misery, shall we?
He's pulling a Team Rocket there.
I know, and he lands in a pig's ass. How appropriate.
Oh.
So, I like how protracted this cutscene is. You think it's going to end, like, 2 times, but it just keeps going on. And so these little imp creatures that live in this tiny asteroid, no pun intended, are just poking him in the butt, and it makes a song.
Ouch.
What a way to go. But he deserved it, so. For those of you who like that particular cutscene, don't worry, we're going to get more of it. In fact, by the end, that pitchfork poking is going to create an entire symphony.
Oh, God.
However, even though we've beaten the boss, we are not done with this world.
Interesting.
All worlds in this game end with a final bonus level, which is... Well, I'll let it speak for itself when it comes out. We'll be doing it in just a minute here. This one is called Castle Rock, not the movie studio. Or
So
the
is it
name
like
of the town in all the Stephen King books.
A mini game or what?
You'll see. I don't want to spoil it. It's probably one of my favorite parts of this game because it's very clever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I waste some more time with lucky tickets here, get some more Back to Origins paintings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we won't be doing this much more. I don't know what possessed me to do this, because even when I was thinking I was going to show them all on screen, I was thinking I'd do it at the beginning of the video. As per usual, I cannot fathom the choices of my past self.
Oh.
I also think it's interesting that the finger that scratches these things in this is clearly not Rayman's finger or a Teensies finger.
That is
I don't know
weird.
what it's supposed to be. It's green. Looks kind of like a frog hand.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
It is. Anyway, so here it is, Castle Rock. We gotta run through this whole level,
Uh-huh.
and because there's a flame wall, we can't stop. So, have you ever run across run across a mobile game that worked this way?
Oh, God.
So these are basically runner levels. These are like infinite runners.
Oh.
And you need to make sure you do not stop, you keep running, and you need to jump and hit stuff in time with the music. So it's also a rhythm game.
Yeah, I was gonna say this with the music, this is basically a rhythm game at this point.
That's what it is. By the way, do you recognize the song?
I don't.
This is basically an instrumental version of the Ram Jam classic Black Betty.
Oh god.
Which is the reason why this song does not appear on the official soundtrack, because they don't actually have the license to it. I think they had to license this song in order to use it in their game. But it is worth it. This was, I think, a level that appeared in a lot of the demos for Rayman Legends before it came out, and it was definitely a good choice for promoting this game. It's really clever.
It also must have taken, because I noticed a number of the level sections are deliberately synced up to the music.
Oh, it all is. When you're playing it, you can see this better than when you're actually watching it. You do need to press something on pretty much every beat.
And that must have been really, really tricky to design.
I can imagine. These are probably some of the better designed levels in the game, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
I am missing a lot of these lungs, which is kind of sad, but whatever.
Oh well.
Yeah. And in the middle of all this fire, we jump on a trampoline and land on the dragon that we defeated last time. At least I think that's him. It could be the dragon who was just fighting us, actually, now that I think about it. It's actually just a pile of dragons, and you can see a hand limping out of it. I love the art design in this game. It's all very clever. Once again, I don't manage to get a gold cup. You could see several points in it where if I'd been more on the beat, I would have gotten a lot of lum bonuses. But that's how it goes.
Oh well.
So, now it takes us out to see all the things we've unlocked. It will do that automatically once you've finished a world.
Uh-huh.
You may have noticed we've actually unlocked the next 4 worlds. Because they do open up new worlds pretty quickly compared with how you open up levels inside the worlds. I think the idea is to give you a chance to, get a taste of all this stuff before you get to it. It's a little weird, but we are not, needless to say, going to be doing this out of order. We're going to be doing all the worlds from beginning to end linearly. Maybe not the best way to experience this game, but I think it works pretty well. And more tickets, boy. Ask me, hadn't gotten tired of these yet. These creatures really are like the most worthless part of this game. We might see them at the end of this video, but either way, it's really just a way to get more lums, and maybe a way to keep some of the art designers in this game occupied by making these creatures. Not that they needed to, because there's so much art content in this game. Like, why do they need to draw more stuff? Playing this game, you almost get the feeling like it's a gamified version of someone's, DeviantArt page.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's it for now. So good night, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.